Hey there, ever glanced at a financial chart and just seen, well, a total mess? All those blinking lights and jagged lines? It can feel like you're trying to crack some impossible code. But what if I told you that underneath all that noise, there's actually a pretty simple story being told? Today, we're going to decode it together. Okay, take a look at this. At first glance, it's just a bunch of red and green blocks on a screen. Kind of intimidating, right? But here's the thing. This isn't some secret language reserved for Wall Street pros. Nope. It's actually a visual story about a constant battle between buyers and sellers. And I promise, by the time we're done here, you'll know exactly how to read it. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We'll break it down into 4 easy steps. First up, what is this thing we're looking at? Then we'll get up close and personal with the star of the show, the candlestick. After that, we'll layer on some cool analytical tools. And finally, we'll put it all together to read the full story. Sound good? Let's get started. All right, first things first. Before we can read the story, we've got to understand the language it's written in. Let's decode this thing. And that's a totally fair question. I mean, what are we looking at here? Is it just a bunch of random data? Some kind of weird abstract art? The answer is, yeah, it's kind of both. It's a special kind of chart designed to pack a ton of information into a really small space. So what we're looking at is called a candlestick chart. Think of each of those little bars as a candle, and each one is like a mini summary that squeezes 4 key pieces of info into one simple shape: where the price opened, where it closed, the highest point it hit, and the lowest point it hit, all for a specific period of time. It's basically a snapshot of all the market action. Okay, let's zoom in a bit. If the whole chart is the storybook, then each of these little candlesticks is a single word. And every single word tells the tale of a fierce tug of war between 2 sides. You've got the buyers, who are trying to pull the price up, and the sellers, who are trying to drag it back down. And this story is basically told in just 2 colors. If you see a green candle, it means the buyers won that round. The price ended up higher than where it started. We call that bullish. But if the candle is red, well, the sellers took control, and the price finished lower. That's bearish. It's really that simple. Green means go up, red means go down. Now, each candle has 2 main parts. That thick colored part, that's the body. It shows you the distance between the opening price and the closing price. So a really long body means it was a pretty decisive victory for one side. And those thin little lines poking out from the top and bottom, those are the wicks. They show us the absolute highest and lowest prices reached during that period, kind of like the full reach of the battle. Okay, cool. So now we can read the individual words, the candlesticks. But, a bunch of single words doesn't really make a story. To get the full picture, we need to add some tools that help us see how all these words form sentences and paragraphs. This is where we go from just looking at raw data to finding some real insight. Whoa, look at that difference. On the left, you've got our basic chart, but on the right, we've layered on these colorful bands and arrows. All of a sudden, the price movement seems to have more structure, right? It's not just floating around anymore. So these colorful new layers have a name. They're called technical indicators. And honestly, the best way to think about them is like a GPS for your chart. They take all that raw price data, run some math on it, and then draw these visuals that help us see the market's direction and momentum way more clearly. So what's their job exactly? Well, they help us see the underlying trend. They can flag potential turning points, and they give us a sense of how strong a price move is. But, and this is super, super important, they are guides, not a crystal ball. They don't predict the future. They just help us understand what's happening right now. All right, we have all the pieces of the puzzle. We've got the chart, we've got the candles, and we've got our indicators. Now for the fun part. Let's put it all together and actually read the story of what happened here. So let's ask the big question. Looking at this whole picture now, what's the story? What is the market actually trying to tell us when we combine everything we've just learned? We're just going to read this thing like you'd read a book from left to right. And what you really want to pay attention to is how those candles interact with that colorful cloud. That's our indicator. That relationship right there, that's the key to the whole story. And here it is, the story in 3 acts. Act 1 at the beginning. See how most of the candles are red and they're trading below that indicator cloud? That's a clear downtrend. The sellers are totally in charge. Then comes the plot twist in the middle, a big push upwards. You see those strong green candles bursting right through the cloud? That's a huge signal that things might be turning around. And finally, Act 3. The price stays above the cloud. A new uptrend is born, and it's clear the buyers have won the war for this session. See, a complete story from start to finish. And this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. The goal of reading a chart isn't to be a fortune teller. It's about understanding what's happening right now, in the present, so you can react to what the market is telling you. So let's quickly recap what we've learned. First, every chart is telling a story about that big battle between buyers and sellers. The individual candlesticks are like the words, and the patterns they make are the sentences. Our technical indicators, they're like a helpful guide, adding context and pointing out the trends. And maybe the most important takeaway of all, reading a chart is a skill of interpretation, not prediction. So I'll leave you with this to think about. We've just learned how to read the story of what's already happened. But how much can that story really tell us about what's going to happen next? Well, that's the real challenge, and maybe even the art of decoding the charts. Thanks for hanging out with me today.